Hello, I'm Nima Rajan. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is promising to deliver a snapshot of the federal government's finances in the House of Commons on July 8th. The Liberals were supposed to present a full budget for 2020 in March, but postponed it indefinitely when the COVID-19 pandemic struck. Revenues have plunged and expenses have soared as millions of workers stopped earning incomes as their workplaces shut down and started collecting benefits instead. The PM says the situation demanded the biggest government response in our lifetimes. Estimates of the federal deficit are $250 billion or more. Meanwhile, a historic physically distant vote is underway at the United Nations General Assembly Hall in New York, as Canada vies for one of two temporary seats at the Security Council table. In what is expected to be a heated competition, the 193 UN ambassadors will decide between Canada, Norway, and Ireland. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has focused on rallying the support of Africa, Latin America, and Arab nations, as well as the small island states of the South Pacific, with European countries expected to unite around Canada's two competitors. The first of the federal Conservative leadership debates takes place tonight in downtown Toronto. The French debate will be live-streamed online with an English event scheduled for tomorrow. None of the four candidates, Leslyn, Peter MacKay, Erin and Derek Sloan, are fluently bilingual. This debate, among other things, will serve as an indicator of which candidates can adequately manage to debate the issues in one of the country's official languages. Meanwhile, MPs will debate some $87 billion in planned primary pandemic-related government spending today, but the package is almost certain to be passed. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's minority Liberal government assured the support of New Democrats by extending the Canada Emergency Response Benefit for 8 weeks. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet also suggested that his party would not vote against the spending estimates, saying that no one wants to send Canadians to polling station lineups during a pandemic. Canada recorded negative inflation for the second month in a row in May as the Consumer Price Index fell by 0.4% compared with a year ago. Statistics Canada says transportation prices contributed the most to the overall decline, mainly because of lower gas prices compared with May of last year. Prices rose in 4 of the 8 major components on a year-over-year basis. Well, with emotions still raw in New Brunswick over the recent shooting deaths of 2 Indigenous people by police, leaders from several First Nations are set to meet with Premier Blaine Higgs. Premier Higgs is likely to be questioned about the ongoing probes and face a call for an Indigenous-led investigation. Currently, Quebec's independent police watchdog agency, known as the BEI, is investigating because New Brunswick has no oversight body of its own. Canadian aerospace company CAE says it is set to begin shipping its new medical ventilators now that the equipment has been certified by Health Canada. Earlier this year, the Montreal-based company signed a contract with the federal government to manufacture and supply 10,000 ventilators. CAE says it will now start shipping hundreds of ventilators every week to hospitals across the country. The Saskatchewan government has introduced legislation to prevent municipalities from banning firearms. The province says this is because the federal government has indicated it plans to pass legislation intended to delegate to municipalities the ability to ban such weapons. Government Relations Minister Lori Carr says Saskatchewan's legislation will better protect the rights of legal firearm and handgun owners. She says the Moe government prefers to encourage education and safety while taking a tough stance on criminals who break existing laws. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order with the White House, which is aimed at promoting accountability in law enforcement. The order includes a provision establishing a database for tracking police officers with excessive use of force complaints, as well as a ban on chokeholds unless an officer's life is at risk. It follows the May 25th death of George Floyd, as well as large anti-racism and police brutality demonstrations around the world. President Trump also used the ceremony to criticize what he describes as, quote, radical and dangerous efforts to defund, dismantle, and dissolve our police departments. Meanwhile, the top infectious disease expert in the U.S. is voicing concerns about President Donald Trump's campaign rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma on Saturday. Dr. Anthony Fauci tells the Daily Beast that when it comes to political rallies, outside is better than inside, and no crowd is better than a crowd. The event is being held at the BOK Center, which can hold 19,000 people. The Trump campaign says it will hand out face masks and hand sanitizer, but there are reportedly no plans to implement social distancing measures. Well, more than 60% of commercial flights in and out of Beijing have been canceled as the Chinese capital raised its alert level against a new COVID-19 outbreak. Other nations are confronting rising numbers of illness and deaths, while the resurgence in China highlights calls for vigilance. A Beijing party official says the virus situation is extremely grave and has truly rung an alarm bell for us. Turkey says its troops have been airlifted across the northern Iraqi border as part of a ground operation against Kurdish militants. The defense ministry says the operation was launched following intense artillery fire into the area. The assault by an unknown number of commando forces is being supported by attack helicopters, armed and unarmed drones. Turkey regularly carries out air and ground operations against the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, which maintains bases in northern Iraq. China's foreign minister is demanding that India punish those behind recent deadly border clashes and is warning New Delhi not to underestimate China's determination to safeguard what it considers its sovereign territory. Wang Yi's comments come 2 days after soldiers from both sides engaged in fighting along their disputed border. 20 Indian troops were reportedly killed, and China suffered an unknown number of casualties. Mr. Wang said China demanded India conduct a thorough investigation and harshly punish those responsible. It was the worst violence since 1962, when a war over competing claims on the remote Himalayan area ended in an uneasy truce. A nonprofit group that promotes healthy living is handing Canadian kids a D+ grade for both physical activity and sedentary behaviors. Participaction's Dr. Mark Tremblay says adults can try to set a good example for children by finding ways to connect, engage, and get them moving. He suggests taking the lead by asking kids if they want to shoot hoops or toss a frisbee around. Participaction says less than 40% of kids are getting the 60 minutes of exercise a day. Well, that'll do it for today's news update. I'm Nima Rajan. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll see you next time.